Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Step Mentorship episode. This time around, we're here with my good friend Uzair, who is going to be starting medical school, and we thought this would be a really great opportunity to pick his brain a little bit with respect to some of the things that he went through the whole process, what was going through his mind when he was applying to medical school, and some other things that he considered while he was in undergrad. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce himself.
Hi Fazan, how are you doing? My name is, as Fazan mentioned, is Uzair Khalid, and I just graduated from Western with a degree in biochemistry and pathology and physics. So
Yeah,
it was a quite science-focused degree, and well, yeah. So I graduated after 4 years, and I'm going to be going to UofT in the fall for medical school, inshallah. Yeah.
nice. So I want to build off of what you said, and I want to ask, when people are applying in high school, there's this stigma behind science programs being like pre-med programs, and so can you address some of the misconceptions or the truths behind like med sci specifically and science in general being a pre-med program? Because your brother also went to medical science.
Yeah, so I think a big misconception coming into university for a lot of students who want to pursue professional programs is that you need to tailor your pre-professional program experience to what you're trying to apply for later on. But the reality is that it literally does not matter. It literally does not matter what you take in your pre-med years, because at the end of the day, when you do get into professional school, whether it be medicine or dentistry or pharmacy or optometry, or at least I know for the health related ones, it does not matter because they'll teach you from the basics and they'll assume that you know nothing. Some programs do have some prerequisites which you have to take, which you have to fulfill over the course of your year, but most of the time they're not overwhelming, and so you don't really need a science focused degree to do that. But that being said, some people, because they're going into these sort of professional programs that are health focused, they do want to stay on they are interested more or less in the science of it, less so than in any other subject. And so that's what I would recommend. Like when you're coming into university, you choose a subject or you choose sort of a general field that you're interested in yourself. Because at the end of the day, what you're interested in is going to result in results later on down the road. If you take, say, my degree has been biochemistry. If you take biochemistry, but you absolutely hate the subject, but you're like, maybe this will give me some background in biochemistry to do the MCAT, that's probably a really bad idea. Because if you really hate biochemistry, like that background that it's going to give you for the MCAT is fine, whatever. But after that, you're going to be hating your life for 4 years or 2 years, however long the program is. And so this idea that science is a pre-med program is not true, because science is a program for people who want to be scientists. And so if you're interested in becoming a scientist, in learning about the science and stuff, then go for science. But if your goal is just medicine or one of the health related professional programs, but you don't want to study science in your undergrad, then by all means don't. And in fact, I think a lot of the times this sort of backfires on some students who decide to go for like a harder program like life science at U of T or med science at Western, and they end up really either hating the program or not really being ready for it. And so what happens is they suffer, unfortunately, they suffer a grade drop. And so if you don't really like the program and you're just sort of going with the crowd, that's probably not the best idea. And so on the other hand, if you want some sort of like backup, or if you want if you're also interested in the research side of things, then for that, I think MedSci is a great program. I think it prepares you very well for a career in academia. If you want to go into industry, or if you want to go into research, if you want to go into PhDs, masters, all of that kind of stuff, I think for that, science is a great program.
Okay. Yeah, I think you mentioned something really important, which I myself hadn't considered in grade 12, which is science is a program meant for people who want to be scientists, not necessarily for people who want to be doctors only,
Yeah.
right? And I remember when I was in grade 12, I wanted to go into medicine, and that's the reason why I ended up going to health sci at Western. And then I changed my mind, and it was a little bit different, obviously, with MedSci, but I think you're completely right in that if you don't actually like what you're doing, you might think, yeah, it's a 4-year struggle, but it's a 4-year struggle. Like, don't undermine it's 4 whole years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, do take that into consideration. I do want to ask you one thing though. So you mentioned about one of the benefits of a science program being that it can potentially help you in your efforts with respect to the MCAT and fulfilling prereqs. Like I know some med schools have Orgo that you need to take, Orgo 1, Orgo 2, whatever. So how do those sort of come into play, and what were some of the benefits that you realized by going into MedSci as opposed to if you had chosen something different?
Okay. On one hand, I think it's kind of a misconception that med-sci is for medical. Like I know it says medical sciences in it, but to be very honest, in my 4 years, there was very little medical that I studied, especially because I was in biochemistry and physics and whatnot, pathology. But even though there's not much medical in the medical sciences, I think what it does help with a little bit is fulfilling prerequisites, number one, and number two, preparing for the MCAT more thoroughly. So if for example, I think in Ontario at least, the school with the most prerequisite courses that you have to take is Ottawa. And that is because Ottawa doesn't require the MCAT. So they got to have some way to make sure that you have a somewhat uh, basic knowledge in science. But anyway, so they have a bunch of prerequisites, right? And so if you theoretically, you could take those prerequisites as part of your electives in a non-science degree. But if you go for a science degree, those electives are going to be inbuilt into the science degree as you go anyway. So you don't have to actually take time out and plan your years to include those prerequisite courses. That being said, obviously you should plan ahead. If you're going for a program that's this competitive, like it definitely makes sense to plan ahead, plan in first year and second year, see what courses you need and whatnot. That's number one, that the prerequisites are sort of inbuilt into the program. The second sort of, I guess, benefit would be that you're given a strong foundational knowledge base in science, right? And so the MCAT is largely biology, chemistry, some psychology, some sociology, and then there's some physics as well, physics and math. But largely it's biology and biochemistry. And so in that sense, you might find that those sections of the MCAT easier to study for if you're coming from a science-based background, simply because of the fact that you studied them in your university, right? That being said, I don't personally see the MCAT as like this impossible exam that you can't do without a science-based background, because thousands of students across the years have done this from music backgrounds or engineering backgrounds, or like non-biology based engineering backgrounds, or even business backgrounds. So there's a whole, even in my class, I can see that there's a whole variety of students coming from literally any program that you can think of. And so it's definitely doable. You don't have to be in a science-based program, but at least when you're studying for the MCAT and you're coming from science, you don't have to spend too much time learning biochemistry of the body. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I heard business and I got kind of excited, but we're not gonna open that door ever again. Hopefully not. But and for some context, if anyone's wondering, Uzair here is going to be enrolled in UofT's med school, so definitely one of the top med schools in Canada. So congratulations. Um, I am also going to transition to talking a little bit about the application process as a whole, not just the MCAT. So could you maybe walk us through some of the things that you had to do with respect to the entire application process? I know some people have to write essays. You have to fill out this like separate OUAC sort of application. Could you just give like an overview of what that was like?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the application process is actually pretty grueling. Like it starts in the summer, and I believe it's probably opening in a few days for Ontario. If not, maybe it's open already, I'm not sure. But it starts in July, at least for Ontario, and then it ends in May. So it's literally a 10-month application cycle. And so there's many steps to the process. And it almost always depends on what school you're applying to. But typically you want to write your MCAT And then you want to, before your application cycle, some people do it in the same year as their application cycle, but I mean, I wouldn't recommend that because you don't know how your MCAT is going to go. And so you don't want to waste money on an application cycle if your MCAT turns out to be not eligible for application. So I would write the MCAT the year before, and then in the year of your application, it's better to start early. So each school has its own requirements. Some schools like MAC have very little requirements. Other schools like UofT or Western have a lot of requirements. And typically those include this like 32 item ABS or autobiographical sketch in which you write like 32 stuff that you might have done in university. You don't have to fill up the maximum. And in fact, they say that it's better to have quality over quantity. So you don't need to fill up the 32 activities / awards / research.
Right.
But I mean, the more the merrier, right? If you have a lot of quality stuff, then by all means include all 32 of those quality things.
Just curious, how many did you have?
I have 32.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Congrats.
But like, it's not that hard to have 32 because you can include a bunch of different things. You can include things from when you were 16 years old. So you can have, like, if you're applying in your 4th year, that's what, six years of stuff that you can write. You know, and plus they include things like awards. So if you want like the entrance scholarship at Western, you can write that as well. If you want the dean's list, you can write that. So it's not that hard. But obviously you don't want to write like, you know, random things like I volunteered for a day at, I don't know, the local masjid. Like that. I mean, if you volunteer for like years at the local masjid, then definitely write that in. But if you volunteer like a day and you have 8 hours, like that's probably not the most meaningful thing to write on your application.
Right.
Okay, so that's the 32 entries, and then some schools have like essays. UofT, I believe, has 7 essays that are mandatory, each 250 words, and then a few essays if you want. There's some academic explanation essays. There's the Black Students Application Program that are additional but optional if you want to include them as well. Some schools like Western has 16 essays.
Wow.
Each of them 2,400 characters. That comes out to 350 words each. So Western is crazy with the amount of essays. But some schools like MAC have no essays. Queens has no essays. So it all depends on the school and what they're looking for in their candidates. After that, once you've gone through the essays, you've gone through the ABS, you also have to find your references. So there's 3 references at least. If you're applying for MD, PhD programs, there's probably a bit more. I think 2 or 3 more. I'm not sure. I've never applied. And so that's like in general what the application is. Once you submit your application, then you have to write this Casper test, which is this online ethics-based test. You can't really study for it. It basically gives you scenarios that you then respond just by typing, just 5 minutes per scenario. And so it goes by really fast. So you write that, you know, a month into your application cycle, and then it's a bunch of waiting. You wait until it depends. Some schools like UBC, they give out interviews in December. Some schools like Dalhousie give it out in November. But some schools, at least in Ontario, interview invitations come out between January and March. And so it's a lot of waiting. But if you're fortunate enough to get that interview invite, then you just prepare for your interview. You go and give it. Every school has its own interview style. Some are multiple mini interviews, which is like 10 stations. You go to each station, you have 2 minutes to read a prompt, 8 minutes or so to answer. Or some schools have 6 minutes, some schools have 7 minutes. Or others are traditional panel interviews. Some school, UofT has a mix where it's some halfway between an MMI, a multiple mini interview, and halfway between a panel. So there's 4 multiple mini interviews, which each is like sort of like a panel session. But yeah, so each school has its own interview style. You just prepare the best way that you can for it, and then you wait again until decisions come out. I think McGill is the school that gives out its decisions the earliest. McGill and Dalhousie. Maybe Memorial also give its results early, but most results like UBC and Ontario come out in May. And so and typically May is the last Like that's the last set of results that you can hear back. So that's why the application cycle ends in May.
Right.
For the I guess lucky slash unlucky few, you might be put on the wait list. And so now you gotta wait a bit more. You gotta wait even more. You maybe and the waiting list can be brutal because you don't know now. Unlike before where you had a date that you could hear back from, now you don't have a date. You know, you just wait until the wait list moves and hopefully you're near the top of the wait list. And so it's pretty gruesome. Sometimes you're on the wait list until August. That's when the classes start. So some schools, they make you stay on the wait list until August because they want to make sure that their class is full. But that would be the odd few.
Right.
Typically, most people should hear back by the end of June, or not. Like it's really the waiting list is a game. You just gotta wait it out.
Right. Interesting. Okay. I'm curious if you're willing to share what are the different universities that you did interview for?
I interviewed at 5 schools. I interviewed at UBC. I interviewed at Queens, Toronto, McMaster, and Ottawa.
Nice. Okay. So again, like I'm not sure like how much information you're allowed to share with respect to the interview process, but if you can maybe take us behind the scenes, give us like a short synopsis of what like each of them were and like what are the differences between them. Like I know you mentioned like Mac is like completely MMI versus UofT is like a hybrid model. So what about like these other ones?
So I think they're all different in that they all have their own values that they're sort of testing. Like if, for example, if you go to NOSM, which is Northern Ontario School of Medicine at Lakehead University, what they do is that they have an MMI, but their MMI, I believe, is more so rural based. So they'll ask you like rural based questions compared to like U of T, which might be a bit more like socio-cultural based questions because that's the type of things they're looking for. But again, these aren't hard and fast rules. Like any school can basically ask any question. But overall, you know, if it's an MMI, you know what to expect because you know you have 8 minutes to answer the prompt and whatnot. UofT, you know that you don't have time to read a prompt. Rather, you just wait at the door. Then there's a signal that you enter the door. Then you talk for 12 minutes. Then you come out. Then you go to the next station. You talk for 12 minutes. You come out. You go to the next station. And so it's like the process itself is pretty uniform across within a university, but across universities, some schools like UBC has an MMI. Ottawa is a completely panel-based where you have 2 to 3 people sitting across you, and they ask you questions for 45, 50 minutes straight. Yeah, so I can't really tell you much about like the content of the questions, but what I can tell you is that they really help make you feel very comfortable. And when you're at the interview stage, you've basically made it past 80% of the applicant pool because there's a huge slashing from the applicant pool to the interview stage because they obviously can only have so many interviews. And so, for example, if you're going to McMaster has like 4,500 applications, and they slash that down to 550 interviews. And then from 550, you have like a 50-50 chance of getting in. So you only have to be like in the top half of interviewees.
Right, I see.
Yeah, and so when they make you comfortable, so basically you go in. Sometimes there's a pre-interview session where you can mingle with med school students or other applicants. Then they take you in, you do your interview, you come out. Sometimes there's post-interview stuff as well. They have admissions videos. They have like a tour of the school, things like that. So they really help you stay comfortable throughout the process. And the interview itself is just one part of the day, of the interview day.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that insight. I'm sure there's a lot of people who didn't know a lot of what you just said. So thank you. I wanted to transition a little bit away from medicine now and ask you, what are some of the things that you considered alongside when you were applying for med school? Did you also look at, master's programs, PhD programs, pharma, other sort of industries, and even like to extend that question to other people you know, like your friends from MedSci and even your brother. Like, what are some of the other things they considered apart from just medicine and med school?
I think it really depends on your interests. And so coming into university, like you're really, at least I can speak for myself that you really don't think that you're going to be able to even get an interview or get accepted. So it's always really helpful to expand your interests rather than just focus on like one thing. Because when you have a broader interest scope, then even if medicine doesn't, or medicine or whatever program that you're trying to go for doesn't work out, at least you have more to yourself, more to who you are than just medicine. So I was personally interested in things like public health. So I applied to a public health master's as something that I would do if I couldn't get into med school. I also looked into some master's programs. They didn't really appeal to me, and so I didn't apply to any of them. And I mean, when at times when I was low and I didn't really think I could get in, I even looked up things like what are the requirements of pharmacy school, of optometry school, of dental school, of med school in the States, of med school in Europe, med school in Pakistan. Like there were lots of times where I didn't think I could get in, and so there was lots of times where I looked into these other programs just to sort of take my mind off things, or to see if there's something else I could apply to that might be a bit more easier to get into. Not necessarily, like these programs are also incredibly difficult to get into. But I mean, the more things you apply to, the better your chances are of being accepted somewhere, right? So at times like these, like I sort of diversified and see what else could I go for.
Yeah, no, you're right. The Canadian med school landscape is very limited because like US, for example, they have a lot more med schools and they have like a tiered system as well, right? Like Harvard and Yale are not the same level as like I don't even know what tier B would be, but like there is a difference. Whereas in Canada, there's less than 15 med schools in all of Canada. So like, Mac and UofT and Queens, like they're all pretty comparable because like it's really hard in general, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. There's 17 faculties of medicine in Canada. A few of them, I believe 2 or 3, are just French based. So you can't, unless you know French well enough to navigate 4 years of med school within French, you can't really apply to those faculties because even their interviews are in French. So it's not like you can game the system and apply for a French school and then decide you might learn French in a summer but no, that's not how it works. You gotta know French. And so, I mean, 13, 14 faculties are in English. So you can only apply to those 13, 14, and so many people like don't get in. It's crazy how few spots there are. And it's not because those people aren't qualified. Like anyone who gets an interview, even people who don't get interviews, like they're pretty competitive. Like they have really high marks, they have really high MCATs. They have incredible extracurriculars, but just because there's just not that many spots, and there's way too many competitive applicants, and so only a subset of the competitive applicants, or subsets of people who would make great doctors or great dentists, actually get into medical school or dental school.
Interesting.
I'm sure, for example, if Mac is taking the top 210 people, right, that apply to them, I'm sure if they take the next 200, that they'll also make some pretty good doctors. Like I'm sure if they take maybe even up to 500, like they can take more applicants, but there's just not enough spots. Like, and most of these spots are government funded, and so the government has to regulate how many people go into med school because the medical education is very subsidized in Canada, and so governments, provincial governments decide how many students a certain medical school is allowed to take under their domestic applicant pool.
Interesting. I actually had no idea about that. So very interesting. I just wanted to end this off by kind of opening up the floor to you and saying if there's any advice or tips that you could share with any high school students or even current undergrad students who are considering medicine or, going through the process writing the MCAT or in general, like the whole med school like mindset. If there's anything you want to tell them, then the floor is all yours.
I think one big thing that I would like to say is when you're coming into university, and I know like medical school is a huge dream, and it's the top of the top that you might want to apply for. I think it's always helpful to explore your interests and not just have your entire personality sort of developed around this goal of going into medical school. Because sure, you might develop your entire personality, all your extracurriculars, all your resume stuff around this singular goal of getting into med school. But once you do get into med school, then what? Now you spent what 8 years of your life, your high school and your university life, going for that one goal of getting in. But after you get in, what are you going to do now? If you don't have a personality beyond that medical school focused vibe, then you're not going to make friends or you're not going to make colleagues. Because after you get in, like no one really cares if you're competitive minded. What they care about is whether or not you're going to be able to work with them. If you're going to be a nice person with them at the hospital or in the clinic. And so if you've developed if you spend 8 years being this cutthroat, I'm going to step over your dead body if to get into medicine, or if you don't develop any interest and all your extracurriculars are research in a medical based laboratory, volunteering in a hospital, shadowing some doctors, then that's who you're going to become at the end of the day. And so I do think you should develop your interests, find some friends, chill back, take some time out for yourself, develop some hobbies, go running, go play soccer or join the MSA, make some friends,
Yeah.
do some advocacy work, find a passion that helps you get through those 4 years of university. Because if all you're going to care about is grades and how to beat that other person to get into that medical school spot, or finding bird courses and not telling other people about it, or finding an extracurricular and then hiding about it so that no one else finds out about it, that's not a good vibe. You should be a bit more friendly, a bit more open. Because who would you want as a doctor? Would you want a doctor who is very competitive minded and doesn't decide to refer you to a higher specialist if they think that this other person is better than them? Or would you like a doctor who's friendly, who's patient, who welcomes you into the clinic and is generally a good person to be around?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna comment and say like I know you primarily through an extracurricular because like we're not in the same program, and I can attest to the fact that Uzair is a person who is beyond that singular med school person. He gives back to the community. This guy was the president of the MSA. I've gone to dinner with him multiple times, so he is definitely a more holistic person than just that like competitive guy who doesn't share anything, and he also mentors a lot of people in MedSci. So great guy. I don't know if you're okay with it. I can put your Instagram like handle, and if people have questions, they can reach out to you. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I personally don't like the vibe of how, like, if you find this, incredible extracurricular and someone asks you, what are you doing in your free time? And you're like, oh, just things here and there. Like, I don't like that type of personality, because it just seems very off-putting and like distance from yourself. And so, I mean, if I find this amazing thing that I'm doing and someone asks me, what are you doing? I'll just tell them that, this is what I'm doing in my free time, or this is what I'm really passionate about. And maybe that'll inspire something in that person as well. You never know. And so,
Exactly.
yeah.
No, you're completely right. And I have a lot of friends who are going through that med school process in different universities who are a bit like that. And I don't want to blame them, because it's unfortunate that that's just the environment that's fostered with med school. So it's not like their fault. It's more about the environment. But I guess change starts from the individual, and hopefully some people listening to this can, take that to heart and become more holistic people. So yeah, I just wanted to end this out by thanking you for taking the time out. I know you're very busy watching Netflix nowadays, enjoying your bit of time off before life becomes busy. So I really want to thank you. And yeah, if the viewers watching this want to get some more insight on a different industry, or get some more details with respect to med school, please message us and let us know, and we'll try our best to accommodate any requests that they are. But with that being said, we're going to sign off. Thank you for watching, and tune in for the next episode.